Good evening and God bless you, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ. Welcome to our special voter registration symposium on this evening. I pray that you have had a wonderful and blessed day and that you are looking forward to an informative evening on tonight. We want to first thank God for once again keeping us in His grace and in His mercy. And we gather tonight understanding that even within the realm of our faith, there is a civic duty that God has placed on our lives. We have a responsibility to be involved in the affairs of this country, in the affairs of our community. And tonight we're going to share with you information that will help us be more effective as we attempt to impact the world on behalf of our Lord and Savior Jesus the Christ. So before we get started tonight, saints, I want you to come on and do as we always do. Hit that share button. Hit that share button tonight. Share us with your family and friends. Invite others to come on and participate and be a part of our gathering on tonight. We have some dynamic presenters tonight. We have some dynamic information, and we want all of you to participate. You don't have to be in New Jersey. You don't have to be in Newark. What we're talking about impacts us on a national and, in fact, even a global level. So come on, share us with family and friends. Hit that share button right now. Invite them to come on and be a part of what we're doing on tonight. Again, tonight is so that the people of God might be informed and our voices would be heard at the polls, not simply as we vote for president, but any time that there is an opportunity to vote, we should be at the polls. We should be casting our opinions. We should be making sure that our politicians understand what it is that we require, and we ought to be holding them accountable. So come on, saints, hit that share button. Invite others to come on and be a part of what we're sharing on tonight, and we are going to get right into our programming for this evening. There are two folk that will be joining me tonight. And before I share in the opening prayer, we want to bring them on screen, on camera, so that they can be a part of our prayer. And I'm going to bring them in right now. They are Sister Jasmine Parker and Brother James Harris. I want to share a little information about both of them on tonight because I am excited to be sharing with them. We have joining us tonight Sister Jasmine Parker. Sister Jasmine Parker is a mother. Sister Jasmine Parker is a community advocate. She works in the area of social work. She is one of the most involved young people I know. She is concerned about the affairs of her community, this state, and indeed this nation. She is a certified advocate for domestic violence with the Sophia organization, a great organization here in our area that promotes domestic violence awareness. They take a firm stand against domestic violence and make sure that that voice is heard on a national scale. So come on, let's send up some hearts. Let's welcome Sister Jasmine Parker on tonight. Show us some love on Facebook. Show us some love on YouTube. Send up some thumbs. Send up some hearts as we welcome tonight Sister Jasmine Parker. Also joining us on tonight is Brother James Harris. Brother James Harris is no stranger to us. Brother James Harris is the former Associate Dean and University Ombudsman at Montclair State University. He is also the former state president of the NAACP here in the state of New Jersey, and he is the immediate past president of the New Jersey Association of Black Educators. He is a trustee at the Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church. Sister Jasmine Parker is one of our enthusiastic youth and young adults here at the Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church. Come on, saints, send up some hearts, send up some love for Brother James Harris as we welcome both of them to our stage on tonight. As I considered this and as we thought about this, they're not two better people that I have the privilege of calling members of Mount Calvary, that I have the privilege of calling friends, and I am grateful to know them because both are concerned about the welfare of our people, both are concerned about the trajectory of this nation, and both have some exciting things to share with us tonight. So come on, saints, put your virtual hands together as we welcome them to the stage on this evening. Now, before we get started, this is a town hall meeting, which means those of you who are watching, you have the opportunity to put questions. Just type them in the chat. We will address your questions. Any questions that you might have, we will address them. We will get you the right answers, and we are going to move forward. Tonight, we begin by focusing on voter registration. And we're going to deal with not only registration tonight, we're going to talk about registration, education, and mobilization. Those three keys we're hitting tonight. And here is what's very important. Tonight is not going to be the end of these town hall conversations. There are other topics that we're going to address in real time in the weeks and months to come. But tonight, we are dealing with voter registration. We're going to share some great information. So again, if you have questions and your mind is like mine, don't rely on remembering till later. Type them in the chat. Let us know what your questions are, and we will certainly get them addressed, and we will certainly get them answered. Sister Jasmine Parker, let us hear you. Just tell us a little bit about what drives you in this area. What is it that makes a young single mother in 2023 so concerned about her community and understanding that voting is a great component of where we go in the future as young people?
Thank you. So for me, I grew up with both of my parents working the elections. So I've known the importance of voting and the importance of being involved with my community from a very young age. I actually also work the elections as a poll worker. I see the cause and effect that it happens not only in the educational system with raising my own child, but also in the social system by being a social worker. And I feel as though my opinion matters, and how it inputs me also affects my child and generations to come after him.
Thank you very, very much, Brother James Harris. You are by default have become our local historian at the church. You have been involved in civil rights as far back as my mind goes. You've been involved in serving this country, defending this country, so that we would have the right to vote. Talk to us for just a moment about what it is that drives you, that you have been so passionate over this cause down through the years. Let us hear your voice and hear what is it that makes you stay on this good fight that needs to be fought.
Thank you, Pastor Branch. First of all, giving praise and honor to the Almighty for the privilege of being here. I'm an old guy, recently celebrated a birthday beyond 70, and I grew up in the rural South. So I have lived through those eras of Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, uh, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and John Lewis, the March on Washington, the Voting Rights Act. And I'm very concerned that we have taken our rights and responsibilities to have a voice for granted. And I'm very concerned that I'm seeing people who are eligible to vote take it for granted and say, my vote doesn't count. And that concerns me a great deal because if your vote doesn't count, other people's vote will. And who will get elected will decide a lot of things that will affect your life. If you don't believe elections matter, consider the last 8 years. We've had two presidents in the last 8 years. One that we praised and honored, and some of us didn't even believe would ever happen. And then we had 4 years of follow up where people actually tried to take away our right to vote. And I dare say that that effort is still ongoing. There are people who are trying to suppress our vote and make it more difficult for us to vote. We can't afford to let that happen. And I
Thank,
am committed to doing everything that I can to encourage my friends to say, my vote does matter because my vote is my voice. And if I don't vote, I don't have a voice.
thank you. Thank you. Very well put. So literally today, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with someone out of the Northeast area, actually on staff at Yale University. And in the conversation, one of the things they talked about is some of the difficulties that they are experiencing in terms of teaching and talking to their students about the Constitution, believe it or not, of these United States and how the system works and their lack of understanding. And one of the things that I shared with that person is, well, perhaps they don't believe the system works. So, Sister Jasmine, being of all of us on the screen tonight, closest to that age group, tell me, do you believe that the system that this country claims to be founded on, do you believe that it can work and that we still have a voice in it?
So, great question. I do believe that the system works. I believe that it not only works, it also has consequences when it does not work. I believe that as a collective, our voices can be heard, and that we have to ensure that we not only vote, we also do the work and we also follow through with it.
Thank you, Brother Harris. So, in your intro, um, looking at the flip side of this coin, some who would be critical of our young people and say that they don't understand, they don't participate, they don't care, and I push against that because I don't believe that to be an accurate narrative. You have been Sister Jasmine's age, probably at that time wearing a larger afro and probably at that time um, fighting the cause, if you will, in a different way. Tell me how, from the perspective of, as you indicated, 70 plus, how is it that you view the system in which we live? Is voting still an important part of what we do? Is registration enough? What is your perspective as I would ask you to speak for your generations and the generations closest to you?
Well, number one, I think that they've taken civics out of the public schools. I think we've done a major disservice because from a very young age in the public schools, you learn about how this country was created, how we rebelled against the British. We created our own constitution and we became a separate country. And we were trying to get away from tyranny of, the King of England. But then we came to America, and by the way, the we is some people came by way of Ellis Island. We
Yes.
didn't have that opportunity. We came here in the belly of ships that took anywhere from 4 to 6 months from Africa to this country. 1619, we were brought here and enslaved. But in 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation said that we were free. And then the 13th Amendment said we had the right to vote. Can you believe that? From slavery to the right to vote. But I think what has happened on the way to 2023 is that younger people haven't seen us struggling hard for very much of anything. They didn't go to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They sometimes don't even believe that John Lewis got beat up. They don't believe that Medgar Evers was killed in the driveway of his Mississippi home in front of his children. So they don't see how we got here. And unfortunately, they have forgotten that in order for democracy to work, it requires people to express their point of view to people who are supposed to represent their interests. So the question now is, if you don't talk to people who are supposed to represent your interests, how do they know you have an interest? And so the right to vote has been taken for granted. And then, of course, some people don't like politicians. Well, it's beyond politicians. It's about electing people who you believe will do the best for your interests. And if you're not communicating with your mayor, if you're not communicating with your assemblyman, if you're not communicating with your senator, they don't know what you want them to do. And they listen to people who pressure them, who are telling them what they want them to do. And so we really have to keep our voices very clear and talk to people. But the loss of history, and you can see now that in some states, they're trying to undo the history that we have made. They're trying to tell us that slaves learned some interesting skills that made them successful. After slavery was never a good thing, but we endured, and ever since slavery, we've been fighting for the right to vote, and we've died for the right to vote. And it's very, very important for people to understand the only time that people would want you to give up something is because it must be of a value.
All right. Thank you. So when I hear what you're both saying, and we talk about politicians being there to serve the interest of the people, well, from the more seasoned generations, I don't have another march left in me. I don't have another protest left in me. And from the younger perspective, can't we all just get along? Can't we? It's not important yet. Please tell me, and I want to hear this from both of you. What is the mechanism of holding a politician accountable for our interests? And how do we even make our interests known to the folk that are asking for our votes?
Jasmine, I'll allow you to go first.
Okay. In terms of how do you make the politician knowledgeable or acknowledge the concerns, you have to, one, educate yourself. You have to understand how it affects you, how it affects your bottom dollar, your environment, your family, and you have to put yourself actually in the middle of it. We are generally a generation that is, if it affects me, then I can talk about it. If it doesn't, then unfortunately, sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind. But holding your politicians accountable, you can visit their office hours. You can meet them within the community. You can get to know them either through social media platforms or in various ways at activities, the elections, schools, board of educations, things of that such. There's so many ways to actually get involved with the community and with the politicians. Get to know what each one's website says. Challenge them. Sometimes, even if it is a healthy challenge, they may say that they're doing X, Y, and Z to get into office, but also after they get into office, ask them, how do they plan to improve this opposed to just doing it? I think that that's very important. I think in terms of my generation, we have fallen aside to believing that fighting is always healthy. And we are trying to fight for other things, whereas we have to get back to the basics, and the basics include education and also voting.
Thank you.
I think that's a very, very good definition of where we are. In addition to that, I know that if the politicians don't come to you, you need to come to them. They have offices, they have telephones, they have email. So there are many ways that you can communicate. But you have to remember, if you're not communicating with them, they can say with honesty, I didn't know you wanted that because you didn't tell me.
Got you.
If you didn't tell me that you wanted the streets to be clean, then I didn't know they were dirty. If you didn't tell me that you thought the schools should be safe, I didn't know that the kids were getting beat up outside of schools. If you want housing to be affordable, I didn't know that you were paying too much for housing because you never told me. You seem to be happy when I see you and you're smiling. So sometimes we wait for politicians to come to us. If they don't come to us, we can go to them, as Jasmine said, in multiple ways. But the most important thing is every politician wants to get reelected. So they value people who vote. And if you don't vote to very many politicians, you really don't count. Your voice is silent unless they have to understand that if you ask them to do something and they don't do it, you're going to remember that when they get ready to ask for your vote again. So that telephone call, that visit to the office, or even that visit to where they are having an event, you need to go there. You need to and don't be afraid. These are people who were voted. They are public servants. Whether they want to hear you or not, you have the responsibilities to make sure your voice is stated and your concern is indicated.
Very good.
That's between elections. On election day, and by the way, guess how many votes each one of us have on election day? Regardless of how much money we have, no matter where we live, on election day, it's the one day that we're truly equal. Because the poorest person in this country has a right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest person in this country have the right to vote. And so if we throw that vote away, it's really very valuable. Very valuable. And politicians and this democracy knows it.
Yeah. And I think that even you mentioned history, that there is a sometimes forgotten value to it, and that value is that folks died so that we would have the right to vote. That we can essentially peaceably walk into a school and cast our vote without being spat upon, without being bitten by dogs, without being hit with batons. So there's an extended value that really comes down to the blood and sweat and tears and prayers of those who came before us. We have a couple of very interesting questions in the chat that I'm going to put to both of you right now. Question number one is, why does everything seem to boil down to just two parties? We don't seem to hear from other party options. Feel free to take that question as you please. Let's start with you, Brother Harris.
Well, if you look at your ballot that has been sent to you, it has now been sent. And by the way, tomorrow is the last day to register in order to vote for November. But if you look at that ballot, there are several parties listed. You have the Democrats, you have the Republicans, you have the Socialist Party, you have the Green Party, and they're all there on the ballot. The issue is that you don't hear as much from those individuals as you do from the major parties, Democrats and Republicans, because they don't have the money and they don't have as many people backing them. We have a structure in this country, and it's particularly evident in New Jersey, called the Democratic Committee and the Republican Committee. They're organized from the national office all the way down to your neighborhood. In your neighborhood, regardless of where you live, there is somebody who represents your neighborhood who's on the Democratic Committee or the Republican Committee. And so the smaller parties do not have the same type of money and have as many people to do the work. But more importantly, the money drives a lot of what you know about elections. You've probably gotten things in the mail from either your senator candidate or your your assembly candidate. If you live in certain communities, you've gotten ads about who to vote for the Board of Education. You've also voting for the county commissioners. They're all on the ballot. So when you get that ballot, please don't throw it in the garbage. Take a look at it. And by the way, they've made it so easy to vote. You can now vote by mail. You don't even have to leave your house except to put the ballot in the mailbox. And some people have already started to vote. So if you got that ballot, fill it out, put it in the mailbox. Your vote will count that way. But please don't throw that ballot anywhere but in a mailbox or one of these special mailboxes that they've set up all over this county and the state.
Allow me to give you an offshoot from that question. So, when we receive the ballots, we see that there are additional parties other than the traditional or the more popular Democratic and Republican, and I believe we even see one of the we saw a Kennedy this week over the past week throw his hat essentially into the arena, denouncing the Democratic Party and running as an independent. Um, is it as a voter? Is it really worth it, in your opinion, that if I cannot find a desirable candidate in one of the major parties, Republican or Democratic, should I vote at all? Is my voting for an independent? If I'm voting for a green candidate, is that a waste of my vote simply because they're not one of the majors?
A vote is never wasted because what it says is this is how I feel about who is running. And if I'm running for office and 20% of the people vote for somebody else, it tells me I'm not making everybody happy. So, yes, every vote counts. Every vote counts because it sends a message of either support or satisfaction or dissatisfaction.
Thank you.
I would even say if I'm voting for an independent and I talk to my girlfriends or my friends and now they're like asking me, soliciting information, and I'm like, yeah, vote for this independent, that can be 50 additional votes opposed to just the one. Therefore, that 50 can outweigh either party in terms of Democratic or Republican. So that person, that independent, can actually have a better chance of winning in terms of the numbers. That's why it's good to not only vote, but educate yourself and spread the word also. You know, while we talk about so many different things throughout the day, whatever it's on social media, talk about your vote. Talk about how you feel, how it impacts you, what you would like to see in change. It's so much gossip and negativity in the world that we have to be able to use our voice to put out that positivity and input and influence into the world as a whole also.
Is it I would just like to add to that the politicians, both those who win the election and lose, they also watch voter patterns, because even though, as you mentioned, the one standing on a particular platform may have lost the overall election, it was so close or so impactful that their platform, albeit a losing platform, still has relevance in terms of how the winning candidate can possibly navigate themselves through office. And I think it's very important for us to understand that very well put. And that's really what I wanted to hear you say to our people, that no vote is the only wasted vote is one that you don't make. If you vote and your candidate does not win, your vote has not been wasted and your voice has been heard. Next question, I'm going to give this to you, Sister Parker. Sister Carolyn Great says, do you think we have a chance going forward with getting our Black people to get out and be heard by voting?
Simple answer, absolutely. We have better of a chance. We have social media. We have word of mouth. We have phone calls, letters, emails. We have one another. That's a great question. But we also have the responsibility, not only civically, but also morally, to influence others If you cannot, or if you know an elder person that has transportation issues, offer them a ride to the election poll, to the election site. Do anything that can help influence that vote, and to allow people to exercise that right that they have.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
And by
Brother
the
Harris?
way, I believe that we at Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, and I hope other churches, will make the voter registration form available. As you go into that building, pick up that voter registration form, fill it out. There's no stamp required. All you got to do is fill it out and put it in the mailbox. And it is so very important to realize that somebody's going to win that election. If you don't vote, somebody's going to win. And if the person that you really don't like happens to be the winner, chances are your life is going to be diminished, not improved.
Yeah.
Because there are people who do not intend for certain people to have the same opportunities that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to look at current conditions. What is it that you really would like to see changed in our society? I have concern about affordable housing. I have a lot of concern about the quality of public schools, particularly in our cities. I have a lot of concern about the fact that our young people in our urban centers, Newark, Jersey City, Patterson, Camden, Asbury Park, New Brunswick, are going to school in buildings that don't have air conditioning. When the COVID broke out, they didn't have computers. And now we find that a lot of those children are way behind. I want to see a politician who's going to say, we're going to put money available to hire more teachers that look like me so that they can teach the history as required by law. But these things will not happen unless we speak to politicians who have to approve the budget and who make these important decisions. I want to see these police officers trained on how to interact with a person who has a mental health issue, rather than pulling out the gun first. How about calling a social worker or a psychologist and talking people down? These are things that really concern me, and my vote is going to go to the person who promises to do something about what I'm concerned about.
Okay. We have another very good question that I think is a great segue from what you just mentioned. This question comes from question and statement comes from Sister Karen Jackson. She says, "Our children are being taught the importance of financial responsibility. It is important our children learn the importance of how legislative decisions affect them." And I think that's such an appropriate question because we see how this month, October, student loans were brought back online, and the repayment of student loans are brought back online. And one of the things that we've seen play out, Sister Jasmine, I'm going to ask you to speak to this. One of the things that we've seen play out is what politicians have done to stand against things like student loan relief. Let's hear what your generation thinks about voting and the economic process and the economic influence that your vote can have.
So I can personally say student loan debt was over my head for a very long time. In terms of a lot of politicians, and we've seen in the last presidential election, they would say that they are going to eliminate student loan debt. And growing up, we were told that if you had student loan debt or any debt at all, you wouldn't be eligible for housing in terms of purchasing a house. It would affect your credit in total in terms of housing, car, and everything that you would desire to do. In terms of the student loan debt, holding your politician accountable. We see what happened with the Supreme Court fighting it. It would go through certain legislations and then it would get denied on a higher level. And that's the back and forth. But there's also ways to contact the Supreme Court justice. You can write them. If you're in the DC area, you can visit, within means, but make them phone calls. The student loan debt is probably what has my generation in a chokehold the most. I have a bachelor's degree. I've always considered going back to school for my master's, but I know if I'm going to have all this debt, I question how can I afford to live and also pay off this debt. So now that we have some little relief in play, it also makes me wonder, well, going forth, the next president, how are they going to be able to hold this so that it's not overturned? Because a lot of legislation can be voted right now, but if another president or officer decides to overturn it, then we go back, and now we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how can we progress. I think voting is all about the progression. Yes, we do have to absolutely know the history of it, but we also have to know what is our goal. If we are looking for student loan, how do we want to get there? What steps are we going to take to make sure that not only are we doing our part, but the politician is doing their part? If we have a time frame, if we say, now student loans are being forgiven at the third year of the term, did you really do what you said you were going to do in the beginning? And how am I going to be able to trust you to say that I want to guarantee my vote for you again?
Thank you. Brother Harris, let me pose this to you. An offshoot again from Sister Jasmine's response. She mentioned the Supreme Court. And I think just in terms of, and I could be wrong, this is my personal opinion, but I think just in terms of exposure to the average Joe, the Supreme Court perhaps has not gotten as much attention as it is now since the time of Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. And I think what we're beginning to see is that the ramifications of our vote or lack thereof can actually extend much further than the term of the person that we're voting for or against, in that we see some of the things coming out of the Supreme Court now that were done, initiated, set up by a person who's no longer the president. And these rules or this bend of the Supreme Court is something that doesn't have a predetermined expiration. Please talk to us for a moment about how important it is that we understand that the vote, our vote, is not a temporary situation, that what we do on those Tuesdays could be things that affect us literally for the rest of our lives. Please speak to that for me.
I'm so glad this issue is coming up because a little bit of civics. We were taught that there were three branches of government. There was the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. The president represents the chief executive officer. The legislative is the Congress, but they're of equal power, according to our Constitution, is the court system. And each president, each governor gets to appoint governors. In the state of New Jersey right now, there are 50 vacancies of judges, which means that people can't have their day in court. But many of the people who get appointed are there for years. Years. Right here in the city of Newark, we have a Ruler Ben Gator. She has a building because she was a long-serving, but she died well into her 80s. These people stay forever.
Forever.
Until, and by the way, their appointment is for life.
Yes.
So whether we like Clarence, Sotomayor, or Roberts, we can talk about them all. They don't have to go anywhere because they are appointed. And so every president kind of looks forward to appointing either Supreme Court justices, but there are also other judges that get appointed at the associate and the regional level. So these people have tremendous power, and it's all at the approval of the president, nominated by the president, approved by Congress. So not only is it important to vote for the president, but we got to vote on those people who have to approve the appointments. And right now in the state of New Jersey, those 50 judges are sitting there waiting to be appointed, but the governor has nominated some, but the legislator, which is, by the way, all controlled by one party, is sitting on not putting them through. We've got people on these boards of trustees and college boards of trustees. They get appointed by the governor, approved by the Senate. They can't get appointed because the governor chooses not to. But who he chooses has a great deal to do with race, gender, and social, sexual orientation and so forth. This is where we can make a difference. For example, I think most people would love to see more teachers who look like the kids in front of them. That's a decision that is influenced by the governor and the legislature. If we don't have enough teachers who are African American or Latino, they can create opportunities, programs, and funding so that more people can get into the profession. Same thing with nursing. I go into these hospitals and just about everybody who's nursing is speaking with an accent. Why can't we train children in Newark and East Orange and Irvington to be nurses? But that's a decision that's made by people who decide policy and programs and budget. But I just want to keep emphasizing, because this sounds like a conversation between three people who are concerned. Every person on this call has the right to vote. No matter how old you are, no matter how young you are, if you're 18 and over, you have the right. No matter what type of car you have, it doesn't matter which type of house you live in, you have the right. But I'm trying to appeal not only to your right, but your responsibility to cast your voice and have a vote. I get very concerned when I see so many people passing up the opportunity and then complaining about how bad things are. Well, they might have gotten better if you had voted for the right people.
One of the things we have a question here, and I think this really speaks to tradition. And Sister Denise Wilkerson states that for the younger generation that didn't grow up around the environment like Jasmine did, example, going to the polls with her parents and experience the importance, who is encouraging the younger generation that their vote counts? Are they leaving it up to the schools? So let's approach that from a couple of different. Let's approach that first from the collegiate level. Speak to in both. For those of you who don't know, Brother Harris, as I mentioned in his introduction, is a former associate dean and university ombudsman at Montclair State University, and Jasmine is a graduate of Montclair State University. So talk to me in the sense that I know that when I was in school, voter registration, there was a major push for it on the college campus. Now, I'm a product of an HBCU, so their activism stance might be a little bit different than some of the other universities. But is that still a major engagement on the college level that folks are being actively encouraged and actively pursued to register to vote? And is it easy for them to actually exercise their right to vote?
I would like to start. My 18th birthday was on the election day in 2008. I actually got my voter registration form outside of my parents, but through my high school also. So that was the East Orange community taking the initiative to actually try to promote and educate the students, as some were turning already 18, some were preparing to turn 18. That was them that actually set up the voter registration within the East Orange school district. At that time, my birthday, I was able to register to vote. And then when it came time to vote, I was able to actually go home because I left the campus of Montclair State to come back to East Orange to actually exercise my vote. I feel as though it as a whole, it's everyone's responsibility. If you're having a conversation with a friend and they're telling you that they're not voting, kind of dig deeper. If they told you they didn't eat today or they didn't have a good day, you would want to know why. So I would say do that same, use those same tools in terms of politicians and voting. That's my standpoint on that.
Thank you.
To the question that you asked, Pastor Branch, not enough effort is put forth to emphasize to students on campus the importance or even in the high schools. For example, Senator Winona Littman years ago passed a law in Essex County. In fact, it was for the state of New Jersey that the voter elections offices of each county was supposed to go into the high schools and register all of the children who were graduating and who would be eligible to vote by the November after their graduation. That is not happening. That will only happen if local people, NAACP, Urban League, and other people who care actually take that upon themselves. But one of the reasons why tuition goes up so much, one of the reasons why the cost of education is so high is because politicians really don't think students are going to vote. So there's a great deal of silence on the campus. And because when they raise tuition, there's not a whole lot of outcry from students who are eligible to vote. But when they look at their voting rolls, they say they didn't vote. And it has been made more easier for students to vote. Very, very often now, colleges have moved voting polls onto the campus. There is a little bit of a problem that was identified by Jasmine, because Jasmine was living in East Orange, but going to school in Montclair. So there was the inconvenience of having to go back from the campus to vote. And that is more challenging to students, because now we're talking about transportation, we're talking about interest, and we're talking about possibly missing a class or two just to go and vote. So those are things that, again, could be resolved with that mail-in ballot, because that ballot goes directly to your home. If you get that ballot, tell mom, tell dad, or when you come home to get some of that home cooking food, take the ballot, fill it out, and send it in. But to your point, not enough has been emphasized on the college campuses. They get there late, and then they don't come back for another 4 years. And students then get the impression, you only want my vote, but you don't want my opinion, so I'm not going to do either.
Thank you. We have another question, and I'll speak to this question. This question comes again from Sister Karen Jackson. She says, in essence, how can we get our middle and high schoolers excited about government and how the laws affect us? This is something that's very near and dear to me, because my journey in understanding politics beyond the textbook was because of my involvement with the late Donald Payne Sr. in two very exciting programs that existed then. I'm not too sure of where they are now. It was called Youth in Government and Model United Nations. And in that time period, Donald Payne Jr. was one of my advisors, his nephew Choppy, and we literally would travel to Trenton for the weekend. We would sit in the chairs of the politicians at the State House, and we would go through their weekly routines. On the Model United Nations level, we represented countries around the world, and on the local level, we were responsible for throughout the year writing bills and understanding how bills got passed and all of that. So I say that to say this, that it kind of goes back to what both of you have been calling for earlier, and that is by way of voting, we can then, through these politicians, dictate even what our children have access to in terms of extracurricular activity. You have heard me preach that we must be more than footballs. We must be more than basketballs. We must be more than soccer balls, baseballs. All of those things are great. But in 2023, none of us, and especially our children, we cannot afford to be one-dimensional. We've got to understand that the world in which we live is so complex that our students are no longer competing with other students from Newark or other students from East Orange or other students from Montclair. They're competing on a global level. And we see the rug being pulled from under us in terms of, again, that wonderful branch of our government called the Supreme Court, some of the things we see happening with affirmative action. some of the things that we see going on with guarantees that were in place that we are losing access to. So again, through your vote, through holding your politicians accountable, it was, as a child, it was great to see Sharp James come to church, to be in the presence of Paine and all of these major figures whose pictures we saw on billboards, but they stopped by the church, they stopped by the school, they stopped by our picnics, they stopped by our cookouts to hear what it was that we needed, what it was that we required, and they advocated for us. And we know that our politicians can advocate because they make it very clear that they are advocating for the peoples and the groups of people that are making their voices heard. We have the same right, we have the same opportunity. And I would dare go out on a limb and say, if we unite our voices are actually much louder than other voices that are being catered to in our community. We have
Pastor, can I just share before we wrap up? I just want to remind people of how many opportunities there are to vote. I just want to go over the different people who you get an opportunity to vote for. First of all, every city has a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Every city has a city council. We have people who represent wards, and we have people at large. But every city, these folks need to hear from you if you care about conditions that you're living under. Then we go to the county. You get to elect the county executive. You get to elect the sheriff.
Brother Harris, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
Please talk just for 30 seconds. Talk about the influence financially of the county executive.
The county executive gets a budget that's approved by 9 people in Essex County. And by the way, 4 of the 9 in Essex County are people of African ancestry. They vote. When you go through the parks and see all these nice parks, the zoo, that's all county. When you see the sheriffs, those are all county people. And when you go to the courtroom, the sheriff, people who are maintaining the court order in the court, those police officers are sheriff officers, okay? The roads in Essex County are done by the county. Senior citizen services by the county. People who live in poverty, free lunch, free rent assistance, free medical, how to sign up for those opportunities, all in the hands of the county. And when if you're a property owner, you'll notice that your tax bill has 3 components. Part of it goes to schools, part of it goes to the city, but the other part goes to the county. And I can tell you, most people have no idea who their county commissioners are. They may see the county exec because the county exec always knows, make sure his picture and name is on everything. In the county of Essex, if you don't know Joe D, you must be blind because his name is on everything. In other counties, the same thing. So yes, the county provides a lot of services. And by the way, we ought to be concerned about who's getting those services and who's providing those services, because I want my money to go to help people who look like me get jobs and opportunities and services.
Any idea how long Joey D has been county executive in Newark, in Essex County?
He's in his 6th term.
6th term.
And he was 12 years as a freeholder before he got elected. So in effect, since he was less than 30 years old, he's been a county elected official and has one of the biggest footprints of political power in the state, in Essex County. And by the way, 320,000 Black folks live in Essex County alone. So our vote can determine the outcome of a local election at the county level and at the state level. And I dare say in a close presidential, the Black folks voting in Essex County can make for a happy day or a very sad outcome if we vote.
If we vote, and Joey D is a good guy. I've known him for years, but I wish he would let me run his next campaign, because if I did, I have a theme song for him that I think would be very appropriate for our younger generation. It is a song by DMX that says, "We ain't going anywhere. We right here."
Pastor, I would just like to add that everything starts at home. We know that kids are going to get educated, or they should be getting educated at school, but it starts at home. Take your kids to the library, support the local library, read books about the government, read books about the presidents. Almost all past presidents has either autobiography or a biography. Get to know some of them as people and not just as politicians. As parents, take your child inside the election site with you. Go over the polling and a ballot with them so that they can understand. These kids have questions. They're going to ask questions regardless if it's easy questions or hard questions. Figure out the answers together. We don't have all the answers as adults or as people, but we can learn, and as we learn, that's how we educate and teach one another. I think that is very crucial. I understand that as a election worker, the kids are not supposed to cast a vote. However, they can be inside there. They can see who you decide to vote for. Educate them. Let them know why you're voting for either Democratic or Republican, line A or line B. Let them know that there's options. Even at the home level, if you are having a tough decision and there's 3 people in your household, exercise a vote. It's very easy to say, hey, who's voting on this? Who's voting on that? And if one person doesn't vote, then now it weighs out differently. Let them see the cause and effect of it, because as our kids get involved, they're going to want to talk about that with their friends, and their friends are going to talk about it with their parents. And that's how we get change to come about. We have to start practicing things at home, and we have to learn and educate ourselves also. We can't leave it up to society, or we can't leave it up to the government. We have to take the initiative to do it ourselves.
Thank you. And before I ask you, I mean, our hour has flown. We have covered a lot. I've got one more way in here. This is coming from another one of our young people, Miss Andrea Jones. She says, I struggle between the stance of the politician's place in economics and morals. I find that both are extremely important, but to find a politician that supports both, that represents our community, is almost non-existent. So again, almost a feeling, an understandable feeling of I don't have anyone. Is there anyone that accurately represents who I am? Please speak to that, because I would dare say that acceptance of immoral politicians is not a requirement. It's just that it's a settlement. Please speak to that. I'll ask both of you to do so.
Well, I am a very, very strong believer of Frederick Douglass' statement that power concedes nothing. Without a demand, it never has and it never will. If you believe that a politician is corrupt or immoral, vote him out. Vote him out. Let him know I don't like what you're doing. There's nothing, by the way, that prohibits you from picking up a phone or emailing or texting a politician to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. I want you to stop doing that, or I want you to do this. I'm pleading with everybody. If you can't do anything else on November the 7th, please vote. But between now and then, contact a legislator or a mayor or a politician and just say, tell them what you want. Tell them what you don't like. And you would be surprised. Some of these folks will really call you back and be very interested in what you're saying, because when they hear your name, they're going to look up to find out, is Jasmine Parker a registered voter? I better listen to her. Does she have a group of following her? Yeah, I better listen to her. She's not a voice in the wilderness. She's a voice that could change my history and my opportunity to serve the people. We should not tolerate people who do not embrace our values. We should vote and find people who we believe, and let me say best, because if we can't find a perfect candidate, you ought to be able to tell the difference between the least imperfect, and the one that's way off base. When people lie constantly, that's not a credible person. And when they deny the things that people know is true, that's not somebody you need to vote for. You need to vote them out, and you need to tell them that you don't like what they're doing. And that doesn't cost you anything. Just a phone call or an email. You talk to everybody else on the phone. Call a politician.
Yep. Sister Jasmine?
I agree with what Dean Harris said. You also have to find out what are your standards. We have so many particulars and standards in life right now, but we have to say, if this person is representing what I like in terms of economics, but morally they are not, then you have to kind of go through the drawing board. I'm a really big pros and cons type of person. I write everything down. Write down what it is that you want to see in a politician, and write down what it is that that politician is actually bringing forth, and write down the changes that you want. Therefore, again, that's holding yourself and that politician accountable. We could do graph charts. We could do all the charts. We can, log into platforms like this, which I'm so thankful for. But there's also town halls meetings in every town. Get to meet these politicians, have conversations. Sometimes even if it's unrelated to politics, if you listen, people will always tell on themselves.
let me and the hour is closed. And yes, Sister Crystal, great point. We cannot just vote a party straight down the line. And sometimes we lose the ability to hold one accountable because we make assumptions that because they're with a particular party that automatically they're going to follow our interest. And history has shown us that that is not necessarily true. So I would ask, and Brother Harris, you kind of weighed in on this earlier in your statement, and this is going to be my final question for Sister Parker and Brother Harris. We heard your concerns as a voter, which I'm sure echoes really most people in our age category. Sister Judge, as a younger voter, give me the top 3 concerns of a voter who had the chance to vote for the first time. I think you said in 2008.
Yes.
What is it that are your top 3 concerns in terms of what you need from your politicians and those who are operating and running your government on your behalf?
So my top 3 concerns relates to education. It relates to women's rights and reproductive system. And it also relates to affordability in terms of housing and healthcare, all of the things in terms of affordability. Whereas we are seeing what's happening in some of the southern states, and how there's bans on books, bans on education, bans on certain words. We have to be able to educate ourselves. We have to be able to make sure that these politicians know, why are they banning these books? Our kids need to be educated, not only on the good, but on the bad as well. Education is the foremost important thing in my household. As a woman, as a childbearing age woman, my reproductive rights, I don't feel as though should be left in the hands of men. I don't understand how a man can tell me what to do with my body, but they won't carry the burden of a child for 9 months. And all the things that comes along with reproducing and the mental health aspect of it, because we forget about the postpartum and how that affects the woman going forth in terms of motherhood and society. Because we talk about postpartum and we know what it means, but it affects women on much larger scales. And I have to be able to afford where I live at. So I need to make sure that housing is affordable. Healthcare within means is affordable. We understand that there's no universal healthcare in the United States. However, healthcare should be provided, and I should not have to pay a student loan debt bill just to go to the hospital for a cut or even to give birth. We have to be able to make these things within means and within reach of one another.
So, brother Harris, I think what Sister Jasmine just did is Sister Jasmine just laid the foundation for our next town hall meeting, and that is some of these topics that we see on the lips of a generation, really for the first time. I
Well,
would dare say.
I think Jasmine projects very well what she learned at Montclair State University, second largest university in the state. However, I most certainly think education has to be a focus, because all of the children have to be educated so that they can become productive citizens in our society. Affordability is a big issue for me. As I go into retirement, am I going to be able to afford to live on my retirement or my savings? Big concern. But there's also a bigger concern that I have, and that's about public safety. I want to be able to shop wherever I want to shop and feel that I'm going to go there, shop, and get home safely without some criminal act or some type of mass shooting. Okay. So affordability, education, yes. Affordability and safety, public safety. I think for most people in our community, that these are the biggies. The cost of living in New Jersey is off the chain. I asked somebody the other day, why do you think so many people take the bus? Because they can't afford a car. But let me say one other thing before we close. And I have to say this, having worked at Montclair State and having seen the success of a Jasmine Parker and so many of her, we need to understand that people, low-income people, your vote is just as important as anybody else's vote. Only about 25% of all the Black people in this country have college degrees, which means that everybody else, the 75% of us, haven't had the privilege of college, don't have the privileges of owning a car, living in a place, and being able to afford a vacation. We have so many people in our community who have such a need just to be able to have a minimum livable wage. You shouldn't have to work 2 and 3 jobs to support a family. And these are things that politicians make decisions about. We shouldn't have the most expensive insurance in the whole country in New Jersey. Think about a senior living in Newark trying to own a car and buy insurance. It's almost prohibited. So these are the concerns that I have. But I really want to emphasize to folks, your vote is your voice, and nobody's voice or vote should be taken for granted. And we got to do it. We got to do it. History tells us that we owe it to our ancestors to be as courageous and committed as they were, because they gave so much.
Thank you. I'm going to post now as we close this meeting. I'm going to post some very important dates that are key dates in terms of what it is that we must position ourselves for. I know this might be a little bit small, depending on what kind of device you're looking at, but we're going to post it on our social media so that you have access to it. And the most pressing date on this list right now is the date for voter registration. That deadline is tomorrow, October 17th. You still have time. You still have time to get this done. Your registration deadline is tomorrow, October 17th. October 28th through November 5th will be the early voting period. If you're planning to go on vacation, if you're planning uh, perhaps a medical procedure that will keep you from being at the polls, this is your window. This is your opportunity. In other words, there's no excuse for you not to allow your voice to be heard. I believe someone posted in the chat I saw earlier, I believe it was from Reverend Jackson. She talked about early in-person voting. All right, there's no excuse, there's no reason why we can't. October 31st, deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot by mail for the general election. Listen, don't come to the trunk or treat if you have not
All right.
applied for your mail in ballot, if that's going to be your method of voting. November 6th by 3 p.m., this is the deadline for in person mail in ballot applications for the general election. And then November 7th is the general election. That's the Tuesday where we're going to the polls. That is the deadline for the post office receipt. In other words, if you're mailing it in, it's got to be stamped by November 7th. And November 13th is the deadline for the receipt of timely mailed postmarked mail in ballots to county boards of election. Simply a fancy way of saying that there's, can we call it a grace period? A grace period that says as long as your vote shows up, your mail in ballot shows up by the 13th of November, and it has a postmark on it before or on November 7th, your vote still counts. And we've seen evidence of what can happen when votes are manipulated and all of those other things. We've seen things happen that we're committed to never allowing to happen in this country nor to us again. And saints, friends, those who are watching live, those who will watch later, the only way we can make it happen is to make our voices heard on not just this election that we're talking about November 7th, but every school boards, whatever sheriffs, executives, whatever election is taking place, not only nationally, but also locally. And when I say local, I mean state, but we can go even further and talk about hyper local, those things that impact your zip code. Those things that, you know what, if your block is voting on the next block association president, show up and vote. Because listen, anything you practice, you become better at. So Mount Calvary and friends. Okay. Thank you, Sister Jasmine. We're getting Brother Harris, Sister Parker. We're getting feedback from where we need to go next. We just have a request that we should have a voting fundamental session. For those who don't recall the many functions of our state. So that's one of the things that we can hit. Thank you so much, Sister Muhammad, another one who's very active in the community. And I'm thrilled tonight because we have so many young voices that are on the line with us. Sister Sandrea, Sister Letitia, Sister Lisa Watson. Letitia, you my age, so we in another group. Sister Jasmine Muhammad. These are the voices, and even those who have been at it for so long that we too can sometimes feel disenfranchised. But listen, we all have a voice, and our voices can be and will be heard. But we must not only register to vote, we must understand why we're voting and who we're voting for. And finally, we must mobilize the vote. Y'all social media people, you young folk, use your social media footprint. I'm telling you, Brother Harris would agree, they are watching you. They are looking to see, is your backdrop the local tavern, or is your backdrop something that says your vote counts? They are watching. We must allow our voices to be heard. Dean Harris, Brother Harris, Trustee Harris, thank you so much for your time, your expertise. Sister Jasmine Parker, thank you so much for your input, your excitement, everything you bring to the table. To every viewer tonight, thank you so much for being a part. Let's get this word out. Let's make a difference in our communities. Let's make a difference in our state, in our country. And I promise you, what we do on the state level, the local level, the national level, it will impact what will happen on the global level. And we will be back. Brother Harris, Sister Parker, we're going to have to come back sooner than I thought. We'll reconvene. We'll deal with some of these other topics that we see on posted in the questions tonight. If any of you have a question offline, drop us an email. We will make sure it gets answered. But we got some hot topics to deal with, and we're going to have the right folk to make sure that all of our concerns are addressed. All hearts and minds are clear. Come on, y'all on Facebook, y'all on YouTube. Send up some love for our facilitators tonight. Sister Jasmine Parker, Brother James Harris. Send up some hearts. Show them how much we appreciate them. I love the two of you. I thank God that He has allowed me and is allowing me to pastor folk who are not only in love with God, but in love with the process, because even the Bible charges us to be responsible citizens in the places in which we live. I want to give God glory tonight for my beloved brother, pastor of the Zion Baptist Church in Jersey City, also an educator, Brother Harris, Pastor Jamel Johnson. God bless you, my friend. To all of you, we thank God for you. We appreciate you. We love you. And as we are a body of believers, we close out tonight with prayer. Let us look unto the Lord. Eternal God, we again say thank you. We thank you, Lord, for the rich heritage that you have given us as people of color. God, we recognize that any height to which we stand today is not because of what we've done, but we recognize that we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. We thank you, God, that you brought before us mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, aunties, uncles that were courageous enough to understand that what they are fighting for in their time may not be realized in their lifetime, but that legacy would be handed down unto us. And God, tonight we operate in the spirit of the Sankofa, in the spirit of the Sankofa bird that flies forward, looking at a bright future, while casting a watchful eye back at our history, understanding that there's no tomorrow without an appreciation of yesterday. So, God, as we move forward in the days to come, this right, this God-given right for which our people have died, our people have fought this right to vote, that every opportunity that we have, we will walk into our polling places. We will mail our ballots, knowing that, as the book of Hebrews declares, that there's a cloud of witnesses around us, a cloud of witnesses that are testifying that the Lord has made a way for us. God, use us to shape the outcome of this world. Allow our voices to reflect the presence of Jesus in the life of this nation. Bless tonight every listener, bless every viewer, bless our facilitators, Sister Parker and Brother Harris. And we thank you, God, for the time that they have taken to not only share their expertise with us, but the time that they have taken to prepare for this evening. Now, Lord, use us in a mighty way. Keep us until we shall gather again. This is your servant's prayer in the matchless name of Jesus. And the people of God declared, amen. Saints, God bless you. I pray that you are blessed by our time together. Brother Harris, bless you, my friend. Sister Parker, bless you, my daughter. God bless you. And we look forward to sharing it with you in the weeks to come. And if you are blessed on tonight, Go ahead and share us with your family. Go ahead and share us with your friends. Go ahead and share us with somebody. Again, because what we've shared tonight is not for Newark. It's not for New Jersey. It's not even for America. It's for the world. God bless you, saints, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you. Thank
God
you.
bless and be safe.
You too. You too.